I'm Mike, 25 years old, and I live in a modest rented house just outside Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's not the kind of place you'd put on a postcard, but for now, it's home. And honestly, I've grown fond of it. It's mine. And that means something. I work for a small but steady logistics company. It's not a flashy gig, but it pays the bills, and I'm moving up slowly. The people I work with are good folks, and that's all I can really ask for. Last spring, I finally treated myself to a new car. It's nothing special, but it's mine, and I'm proud of it. I'm not married, don't have a girlfriend, and, to be real, I'm good with how things are. Most weekends, you'll find me out fishing or hanging with my buddies, grilling burgers in the backyard. Life's pretty simple, and honestly, I'm not complaining. I like it that way. Now there's this woman at work, Julia. She's been there longer than me, probably around 36 or 37, though she doesn't look it. She's one of those people who can walk into a room and instantly light it up without even trying. Always cracking jokes, always warm. The kind of person that just makes you feel better by being around. I've never seen her without a smile, always upbeat. I never really thought too much about her life, to be honest. I just assumed she had everything figured out, like she always does. But anyway, it was just another Tuesday. We were in the break room, eating lunch at one of those ugly plastic tables, chatting about shipments and the mess up with the schedule that morning. I had my usual turkey sandwich and iced coffee. She had some leftover pasta, which she always said was a failed attempt at adulting, but it smelled way better than my sandwich. We were in the middle of talking about a client who kept pushing deadlines, and then she said something that threw me off completely. She laughed and said, "Maybe I'll just leave him one day and disappear." I chuckled, thinking she was joking, but then she paused, just for a beat too long. She stopped twirling her fork, looked up, and stared directly at me. Something about her eyes changed in that moment. It wasn't the usual playful look she gave everyone. This was different. It was quiet, serious, like she meant it, or, at the very least, wanted me to know there was more to what she'd said. It felt real. I didn't know how to respond, so I just laughed awkwardly and said something stupid like, "Well, if you do, let me know if you need help packing." She smirked but didn't say anything else. The moment passed quickly, and she went back to her pasta. The conversation moved on, and I thought that would be the end of it. Back to normal, or so I thought. But the rest of the day, I couldn't get that look out of my head. The way she stared at me in that brief moment. It lingered with me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeper there, something she wasn't saying. The day continued as usual. We were in and out of meetings, going over spreadsheets, inventory reports, the usual stuff. But each time I walked by her desk, I caught myself glancing over at her, wondering if she was okay. She acted just like she always did, smiling, chatting with the guys from IT, cracking jokes, but I couldn't help but wonder if it was all a front. Maybe I was reading too much into it, overthinking things. But I've known people who hide their pain behind a smile. I've seen it before, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Julia was doing just that. After work, we both happened to be leaving at the same time. She was putting on her coat near the side entrance, and I paused for just a second, unsure of what to do. Then, I decided to walk over to her and say, "Hey, about earlier, that thing you said. At lunch, were you serious or were you just messing around?" She looked at me calm as ever and said, "Why don't you walk with me a bit, I'll tell you more." So we walked just down the street, nothing dramatic. The sun was setting and the sky had that orange paint kind of glow. It was quiet. We didn't talk at first, just walked side by side through a couple of quiet blocks. Then she said, "I wasn't really joking. Maybe a little, but not really. I stayed quiet, let her keep going. She told me that when she got married, her husband was different. Sweet, passionate, full of dreams, played guitar, wrote her notes, made her feel like she was in a movie. She was in love fully, deeply. She gave everything. But somewhere along the way, life got heavy and he stopped showing up. Not physically, he was always there. But not really there. He stopped working. Stopped caring about plans or goals. Didn't want kids. Didn't want more. He's just there, she said. Existing while I'm out here. Trying to make things work. Trying to build something. And I'm tired. Mike, I'm so tired. She stopped walking, looked away, then quietly added, I don't even recognize him anymore. I didn't know what to say at first, but I could feel it. The weight she was carrying hiding behind that humor every day at work. So I said the only honest thing I could think of, you don't have to keep carrying it alone. And whatever you decide, just do. What your heart knows is right. Hiri's welled up a little. She nodded, then forced a smile. Thanks, she said. Really? We stood there for a few more seconds. Then she said she had to get going. I didn't push, I just watched her walk off down the sidewalk, her coat fluttering a little in the breeze. That night I sat in my car for a long time before starting the engine. I couldn't stop replaying it all. The way she spoke, the way she looked at me. It wasn't just a joke. And something told me this was only the beginning. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because something terrible happened, but because something honest did. And honesty sticks with you the next morning at work. Things were normal. Julia was at her desk, like always typing, sipping her usual coffee with that absurd amount of cinnamon she liked. She gave me a soft smile when I walked in, and I nodded back. No extra words. Just a quiet understanding between us, like Webuth knew that yesterday hadn't just been a walk. All day I wanted to say something, maybe check in, maybe continue the conversation. But I didn't want to push. If she wanted to talk more, she'd talk around 4:30 p. I got up to refill my water bottle and saw her standing by the window in the hallway, alone looking out at the sky like she wasn't really seeing it. I took a breath and walked over. Hey, I said. She turned, smiled again, a little more tired this time. Hey, we stood there in silence for second. I was thinking. I said, if you ever want to grab a coffee after work, not for anything weird, just to talk, I'd be down. She hesitated, then gave a short nod. Yeah, okay. Actually, I'd like that. So after work, we drove separately to this small coffee place a few blocks from the office. Not one of those trendy spots, just a quiet corner cafe with old couches and cheap muffins. We sat near the back, where no one could really overhear, and she just started talking. She told me how they met her and her husband. She was 24, just out of school working her first real job. He was a musician back then, charming, funny, magnetic. He used to write her songs, pick her up from work with flowers, plan road trips. Just because I thought I hit the jackpot, she said, staring at her cup. He was so full of life, of energy. Made me feel like the world was ours. They moved in together fast, got married a year later. Everything felt like a movie. Then a life happened. He couldn't keep a steady job, said it killed his creativity. She picked up the slack at first because she believed in him, believed he'd get there, believed they were a team. But years went by. Nothing changed. He stopped writing music, stopped applying to gigs, eventually stopped even pretending. He just exists now, she said. Sits at home, plays video games, smokes. I pay the rent, buy the groceries, handle the bills, and he doesn't seem to care. She paused and gave this short, bitter laugh. He even jokes sometimes that I'm too serious, or that I'm killing the vibe, as if making sure we can eat is too serious. I listened, didn't interrupt. She went on to tell me that they'd talked about kids once. He said no flat out, said the world was too messed up and he didn't want their responsibility. That hit her hard. She'll ways. Wanted to be a mom. After that conversation, she said something inside. Me started breaking like this wall I built to protect our relationship just started cracking little by little. Shetreed counseling. He agreed. Came once, then never again. Said it was pointless, told her. She was overreacting, that she knew what he was like when she married him, that she had no right to expect more. Now, I've spent the last 2 years convincing myself to stay, she said, her voice cracking slightly, telling myself that this is what I signed up for. That love means sacrifice, that I can make it work if I just keep trying. She looked up at me then for the first time since. We sat down. Her eyes were red but focused. But I'm exhausted. I come home and feel like I'm walking into a place where I don't belong. I feel like I'm slowly disappearing. I didn't have our Hearst answer. No advice. Just one honest thought. I don't think love is supposed to feel like that. She wiped at her eyes and nodded. I know. We sat there for a while after that. Not talking, just sitting in silence while the cafe around us hummed with low conversation and the occasional clatter of mugs. It wasn't awkward. It felt necessary, like she needed someone to just be there without fixing it. Eventually she stood up. Thanks for listening. Mike. Really, anytime I said, and I mean that. She smiled. Not one of those bright, showy smiles she gave around the office. This one was soft, real. We walked out together. It was dark by. Then the parking lot was mostly empty, except for a couple of old sedans and the blinking sign of a gas station across the street. As she opened her car door, she turned to me and said, I think I've already made my decision, I just haven't admitted it out loud yet. I didn't press her to say more, I just nodded. Whatever you do, make sure it's for you, you deserve to be happy, she looked at me again, and that same look from yesterday came back. That heavy, honest, vulnerable look, like she wanted to say something more, but wasn't ready yet. Good night, Mike. Good night, Julia. She drove off, and I stood there for a moment before heading to my car. The night felt quiet in a new way, not empty, just uncertain. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't expect anything, but I knew one thing for sure. That wasn't the last time we'd talk about it. A couple months went by. Life didn't exactly slow down. Work was still work. Bills were still coming in, and weekends still felt too short. But something had shifted in how I saw things. Or maybe in how I saw her. Julia and I didn't hang out outside of work after that night. At the cafe. Not really there. Were a few late-night texts, mostly jokes or comments about stressful work, emails, and occasional coffee breaks that lasted a few minutes longer than they should have. But there was also space. She seemed toned it, and I respected that I didn't want to be the guy hovering around while she tried to sort through years of something heavy. So I backed off a little. Not completely, just enough. Still I noticed things. She laughed a little less. Didn't stay late at the office anymore. Some days she looked tired. Not in a I didn't sleep kind of way, but more like her soul was carrying something extra. I'd ask if she was okay, and she'd smile, that same polite smile, and say, I'm good, just tired, I knew not to dig. Then one Thursday afternoon, she came into the office about 10 minutes late. No makeup, wet hair pulled back, and a thick folder tucked under her arm. She looked different, not broken, not sad, just drained, but calm. She didn't say much, that day did her work. Kept to herself, answered questions when needed around 300 p.m. I passed by her desk and asked if she wanted to grab a coffee after work like we used to. She looked up, blinked like she'd forgotten I existed, then nodded. Yeah, that might be nice. We ended up at the same cafe again. Shortered chamomile tea I stuck, with coffee. And after a few minutes of just small talk about traffic, a new client. The upcoming long weekend, she set her cup down and said it. It's done. I didn't catch it at first. What's done? She gave me a look. Not cold, not emotional. Just final. The divorce. It's official. As off today, I stared at her for a second. Wow, you really did it. She nodded. Yeah. Silence sat between us again. I didn't know what to say. I could tell she wasn't looking for congratulations or pity or even validation. She just needed to say it, out loud. How do you feel? I finally asked. She let out a long breath and leaned back in her chair. I thought I'd feel free or relieved or scared. I don't know, but mostly I just feel hollow. She dabbed her fingers on the side of her mug. It's weird, Mike. I should have done this a long time ago, but I kept hoping he'd change, that we'd go back to who we were. And now that it's done, I realize those people don't even exist anymore. In nodded. That's heavy. Yeah, she whispered. She looked out the window watching, a bus pull up across the street. I wasted so much time, she said softly. All those years I gave everything I had to something that was already dead. I just didn't want to admit it. I leaned forward. I don't think they were wasted. She looked at me, eyebrows raised. You loved him. You believed in something. You tried. That's not a waste. Julia, that's who you are. Her eyes softened a bit, but Hermith stayed still. Then she said, he didn't fight for me. Not even when I told him I was leaving. He just said, I get it. That's it. No argument, no emotion, just done. We sat in silence again. She looked like she wanted to cry but wouldn't let herself. I wasn't sure if I should reach out, touch her hand, or say something more. But instead I just said, you did what you had to do, and you did it with dignity. That matters. She closed her eyes for a second, then opened them and forced a half smile. Thanks. The conversation moved on after that. Slowly, cautiously, she asked me about my weekend plans. I told her I'd be heading to the lake with some friends trying to catch bass and sunburn. She laughed lightly and said, I needed a hobby that didn't smell like fish. As we left the cafe, she stopped me outside, her hand on the door. I know you've been really kind to me through all of this, she said, and I want you to know I appreciate it. Truly, you don't have to thank me, I replied. I just care. She looked at me a little, longer than usual, not romantic, not longing, just human, like someone who finally saw that someone was on her side. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Not out of stress this time, but something else, like I was waiting for whatever was supposed to come next, even though I had no idea what that would be. The next few weeks were slow. We kept working together, like always, but she was more distant, not cold, just guarded, like she closed a door in her life and didn't know what kind of room she was walking into next. I didn't push. I was there, consistent, quiet, but I did start noticing something. The way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't watching. Not with sadness, not even with curiosity, just this sort of cautious warmth. And for the first time I started thinking maybe this wasn't just me being kind. Maybe there was something more building here. But I knew better than to expect anything too soon. She just untangled years of heartache. She needed time-space. Healing. So, I waited, not like someone standing at the door, with flowers, more like someone sitting nearby, willing to stay until the storm passed. You never really know how strong a connection is until it gets quiet. Until there's no momentum, no tension, no clear next step, just stillness. That's where Julia and I lived for a while after the divorce. She didn't jump into anything, and I respected the hell out of that. No late-night texts. No impulsive conversations about what we are. Just a quiet, slow rebuild of who she was. One Monday morning and Wednesday afternoon. At a time I kept showing up, not in any big dramatic way. I'd carry her box off aisles down the hallway. Pick up an extra coffee for her if I was stopping at the cafe, Her dumb memes when she looked, stressed, that kind of thing. We weren't dating. We were not dating either. It was a middle space, fragile, awkward, weirdly peaceful. At work, she kept everything professional. Always did. But there were small cracks, like the way she lingered a little longer at my desk when she had a question, or how she'd smile wider when I sighed something stupid just to make her laugh, or how every now and then when she thought no one was looking, she'd just look at me, but she never crossed the line, not even close. And honestly, neither did I, because I knew she was scared. Not scared of me. Scared of believing again. Scared of being fooled. Scared that everything she just crawled out of might repeat itself in a new form, with a new face. One Friday evening, in early spring, about 10 months after that first walk, we were both staying late, catching up on reports before the end of quarter deadline. Everyone else had gone home. The office lights were low. I was printing out a stack of invoices when she walked over and leaned on the edge of my desk. "You're really not going to take the night off?" she asked. I smirked. "Only if you do." She sighed and sat down across from me, tossing a stress ball from one hand to the other. And then out of nowhere she said, "Do you ever think people like us just miss the boat completely?" I looked up. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "I don't know. Like some people find the person they're meant to be with in their 20s, start a family, settle down, and some of us just keep restarting." Over and over I paused, for a moment, then said, "I don't think there's one boat, I think there's 1,000, and you can get on any of them whenever you're ready." She didn't say anything, right away. Just stare at the window behind me where the parking lot lights were casting long shadows on the floor. Then she whispered, "I don't know if I'll ever be ready." I didn't argue. I didn't tell her she was wrong. I just said, "Even if you're not, I'll still be here." That night she didn't say goodbye when she left, just smiled faintly and touched my hand for half a second before walking out. It was the first time she touched me. It felt like electricity. Weeks passed. Things didn't change much, but they also changed. Completely. She invited me to help her move some boxes out of storage one weekend. Said she wanted to finally throw out the crap from her last life. We sorted through old clothes books, wedding photo albums she never looked at anymore. She didn't cry, she didn't say much at all. But when she handed me a box labeled honeymoon and said, "Can you take this straight to the trash?" I understood what that meant. A few weeks later, she texted me late on a Sunday night. Not about work, just a single message. "What do you do when you feel like you can finally breathe again, but you're scared it won't last?" I stared at it for a while, then replied, "You breathe anyway." She didn't answer. But the next day at work, she left the coffee on my desk. No note, just the cup still warm. That was her way of saying thank you. And then one day, almost a full year after, everything started, it happened. We were out walking after work. Not planning anything. The air was warm. The sun was low. We'd stopped for ice cream because she said she felt like doing something dumb and childish. I made a joke about the sprinkles on her cone. She rolled her eyes, then looked at me and didn't look away. "I need to ask you something," she said. "Okay, why do you been so patient with me?" I shrugged. "Because you're worth being patient for." She looked down. Her fingers tightened a little around her cone. "I've been trying not to feel anything, not to believe in anything, because I've seen how that ends. But I don't think I can do that anymore." I didn't say a word, just stood there, waiting. She took a small step closer, close enough that I could see the flicker of fear and hope in her eyes all at once, and then she said it quiet, unsure but real. "I think I want to try, if you still do." I didn't say yes. I didn't say anything dramatic. I just reached out and gently took her free hand. And that was enough. Over the next weeks, we slowly let it happen. No announcements, no labels, just presents, comfort, late-night phone calls, weekend grocery trips, a shared blanket on the couch, her toothbrush next to mine. She still had her guard up. Sometimes I still treaded lightly, but every day. She let me in a little more, and I really knew that she was falling for me. Not like in the movies, not all at once, but in the quiet moments where love actually lives. It's strange how slowly everything changed. And yet, when I look back, it feels like it all happened in a blink. Julia and I never had a big first kiss moment in the rainer, some dramatic turning point with fireworks in the sky. Ours wasn't that kind of story. Ours was built on a year of quiet moments, steady trust, and days that blurred into weeks until we both woke up and realized this is it. We are a couple. No labels, no big talk, just real. I remember the first time I introduced her to my friends. It was a Saturday afternoon. We were at the lake, grilling hot dogs and drinking cold beer. I could feel the curiosity in their eyes. They didn't say anything, but I knew they were, wondering why I'd never mentioned her before. Julia fit in, and like she'd always been there. She joked with the guys, helped with the grill, even taught my buddy's little niece how to skeep rocks. I watched her that day laughing barefoot, in the grass, and it hit me like a wave. I didn't want a life without her in it. Later that night, while we were packing up, she looked at me and said, "They're good people. You got good people around you." "So do you?" I said without thinking. She gave me this soft look, one I'd come to know well, the kind that said everything without needing to say a word. We didn't talk about the future that night, but I knew she was thinking about it just like I was. A few months later, I started looking at houses. Not seriously at first, just browsing. Then one day, while we were having coffee at the same little shop where she first told me about her divorce, I showed her a listing on my phone. "You're thinking of buying?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Thinking?" I said. "Just thinking." She scrolled through the photos. It was a small house. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a backyard big enough for a dog or maybe kids someday. She didn't say anything for a while, then handed the phone back. "If you buy it, I'll help you paint the kitchen." That was her way of saying yes. I closed on the house 4 months later. She moved in a week after that. At first, she kept most of her things in boxes, so she didn't want to invade my space too fast. But by month 2, her books were on the shelves. Her mugs were in the cabinet. Her slippers were always near the couch. It was never just my house after that. It was ours. And it didn't take long for me to realize something else. I didn't want to just live with her. I wanted to marry her. I proposed on a Sunday. Nothing elaborate, just us. We were sitting on the porch drinking coffee, the morning sun lighting up her face in that soft golden way. I said, "Julia." She looked over. "Yeah." I reached into my pocket, pulled out a simple silver ring. "No diamond, just a quiet band. I don't want to keep waiting. I want to build a life with you. Officially, will you marry me?" She stared at me stunned, and for a second I thought maybe I'd pushed too soon, that she wasn't ready. Then her eyes filled with tears, and she laughed this soft, beautiful, slightly shaky laugh. "You're really doing this on the porch?" I smiled. I figured it was our thing. She nodded, wiped her eyes, and whispered, "Yes." I slipped the ring on her finger. She kissed me like we hadn't already been kissing for months. And just like that, we were engaged. We got married the following spring, small ceremony, close friends, no big production. She wore a pale blue dress, and I wore the only suit. Owned her mom flew in from out of state. My dad gave a toast. Everyone cried, including me. 2 months later, Julia found out she was pregnant. she told me on a Tuesday night in the kitchen, holding a cheap test in one hand and a slice of pizza in the other. She looked terrified, excited, overwhelmed. I couldn't stop smiling. We stood there in the kitchen for 10 minutes holding each other in stunned silence. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered. "You don't have to be," I said. "We'll figure it out." We did 9 months later. Our daughter was born. Her name is Lily. She has Julia's eyes. Now, as I sit here on the same porch where I proposed watching Julia rock, Lily to sleep in the chair across from me, I think about that day in the break room when she looked me in the eyes and said she might leave him. She wasn't joking. Not really, she was breaking in slow motion, hiding it behind her smile. And somehow I caught it. Not because I was special, not because I was brave, but because I saw her and I didn't look away. We're not perfect. Our mornings are messy. Our house is loud. We fight sometimes over groceries or who forgot to take the trash out. But there's laughter in the walls. There's love in every corner. And the truth is, I don't care that she sold her. I don't care what. People say I don't care that our story wasn't simple. It's ours. And it's the best thing that ever happened to.